DGTass. Dumb guys talk about smart stuff.
All right, welcome to the podcast. You got dumb guys talking about smart stuff. I'm Barry.
I'm Heath.
And today we're going to talk about The Matrix.
The Matrix. We're doing a media review.
Media review on The Matrix.
Yes. And I've watched the trilogy probably a billion times. And I put them in recently. And it's kind of interesting because I was looking all over my house. And I knew I owned the whole trilogy. Could not find them. And all three had fallen behind my TV.
That's
just
interesting.
Those three movies.
That's kind of weird.
It is a little weird.
I've seen the trilogy a million times as well.
Mm-hmm.
Today I think we're going to focus on the first movie.
Yes.
Which is obviously the best of the trilogy. And episodes 2 and 3 might not even be mentionable, actually.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a thing or two to bring up about them if we've got some time. But the first one's always kind of been a movie that I think kind of changed my perspective on movies as far as like having philosophy in them, that sort of thing. And the day I saw them, when it came out when I was like about 19 or so, I had a little job that my dad sent me on to help somebody he knows work on some stuff under their house so they could sell it. And so my brother and I went there, crawled under a house all day with lamps, with exposed light bulbs. We'd crawl under all the way under, break them, be in pitch blackness, crawl all the way back. So we basically had this kind of miserable day like that. And my brother and I crawled out from under that place and finally said, that's enough. Let's go to the theater. And we went and saw The Matrix. And so it's kind of the ultimate escapism after a day.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah. I actually didn't even see The Matrix when it first came out. I waited a little bit, and there was hype going on about it. And I think I was going through that phase where every new movie sucked.
Uh-huh.
It didn't hold up to, the great movies of the early 90s or the 80s that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
But then I eventually broke down and saw it, and I was like, okay, I see what all the hype's about.
Yeah. And I've seen some people say, like, film critics kind of point out that the filmmaking aspect, the storyline of Neo, and building up to him versus the Agent Smith, isn't really that unique. It's kind of real common storytelling.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to mention that I think if the Wachowski brothers, is that how you say it? Wachowski?
Wachowski.
Brother and sister, whatever you want to call them now.
Yeah.
I think that if their future movies would have followed a more standard storytelling, type like The Matrix did, they probably would have been more successful. As I was watching The Matrix, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about the storytelling, and I'm like, they hook you right away because you don't know what's going on. So you open up the movie and you just hear two voices talking, and you don't know what they're talking about, but it's all mysterious and intriguing. Mm-hmm. And then you're thrown right into the sequence with Trinity. And again, she's doing these amazing things that you're like, well, how does she do this? How is she running around the wall? How is she taking on 5 cops, all on their own?
Yeah. And
you see the Agent Smith, the agents, and you're like, who are these guys? At first you're thinking, okay, these are just like FBI dudes that are coming in on the police territory or whatever, jurisdiction. But it's all super mysterious, and so it gets you right away. You're like, what's going on here?
Yes, and it kind of gives you a little bit sense at the beginning that maybe Trinity's going to be the antagonist of the movie at first, and then the police are afraid of her. But then it kind of quickly twists because you see Keanu Reeves' character after that.
And you introduce Keanu Reeves right after that, and that's when you see the simulacra and simulation.
That's something I caught for the first time actually when I watched it again.
Right, and I never even caught that. I got that from you.
Yeah, and it's kind of, and that I had the plan of watching it looking for things that I missed before.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've ever watched it with simulation theory or are we really in the Matrix in mind.
Right.
When I first watched it, I was kind of into Hong Kong movies at the time, and say Jackie Chan, Jet Li, those types of guys. And I was really into the action sequences and how it was actually that same choreographer that did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, if I remember right, did The Matrix.
Really?
And the whole thing of people running, jumping, and then they're pulled on a string, so they jump really high. Or pulled on a cable.
Yeah.
And so I was really into that when it first came out when I was 19 years old.
Interesting. Because the action parts of movies are really what doesn't get me at all. Like, I'm all about the story.
Yeah.
And, and the intrigue. And that's what The Matrix brings, especially when you start getting into, now we're with Neo, we're with his character. And he also is in our position as the audience. He doesn't know what's going on. He knows something's going on, but he doesn't know what it is. Yeah. And he's going to get blown away when he finally realizes what happens. And that's, as I was watching the movie over again and going through this with him, I'm sitting there trying to visualize it from the perspective of a first-time viewer. And that's what I was getting. I was like, wow, this is very intriguing when you don't know what's going on, because they don't tell you what's going on, all the way up to the point where he goes and talks to Morpheus for the first time, and Morpheus is still being very mysterious, and he's like, I can't tell you, you have to take one of these pills to find out. And once you do, there's no turning back.
And I still remember at the theater, the first time I saw it, the line after he had woken up and he kind of wakes up and all those needles have been in him.
Yep.
And then he opens his eyes and say, why do my eyes hurt? And they're like, because you never used them before.
Right.
I remember that being so mysterious.
Yeah.
And you're waiting to find out why it's the explanation for this.
Exactly.
And so I don't even caught on when he woke up that he was in one reality and another.
Yeah.
At the time, I think it was just, I don't know. I don't know what I thought when I saw him wake up in that little pod.
Yeah, definitely takes some time to grasp it, what's going on. Which is actually, it's really an interesting thing to think about. That you bring up the eyes and how he's never used them. And it's weird. It makes you think in real life, what are our eyes really doing? How do they really work? Are we really seeing something? I mean, because really all it is your eyes are taking in light, and your brain is interpreting it into what it is. So what we actually see visually, I mean, what is that? Like, is that even real? I guess that kind of I wonder if we're just seeing a Matrix type of thing.
Yeah, and another thing that's interesting to me about, say, Matrix in our reality and what we see is the very small spectrum of the light that we see.
Yeah, right.
Very small. And I heard some people talking about human optimization, and what if we developed eyes to where we could see spores floating around, and we knew that when there's a flu germ floating in the air, we could see that and avoid it.
Yeah. Or
even if we saw infrared.
Right.
Or X-ray.
Well, and I was actually just recently, I was reading up, or I heard it on another podcast, there were individuals who couldn't see. And so they're making that up. Their brain is making up for that with their other senses. And they can still get some kind of visualization. I've always actually thought about this, and I think it would be really crazy. Like, I don't want to be blind because I want my eyes. Yeah. But what would it be like if you were blind? Like, what would be going on in your brain? Your brain would just become more advanced on its other senses. Yeah,
would you develop that daredevil sonar?
Exactly. And actually, there's something that I'll have to tell you about. There's a podcast about it that talks about becoming Batman. It's an NPR podcast, and it's about a blind guy who's using sonar to see, and that's almost like what it is. He could ride a bike, he could do all kinds of crazy stuff, because he's basically, his brain is interpreting other senses and not just the light.
Yeah, and also with that in mind of how small the light spectrum we see, and a lot of times how many people are just totally into what you see is what you get.
Right. Yeah.
How narrow is that vision?
That's very narrow, absolutely, because there's so much more out there, especially when you think that, there's things we can't see, which basically makes it invisible. And if it's invisible, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that we are not aware of it. And I think you could break that down to all kinds of stuff like religion and, physics, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Fermi paradox a little bit later, and I think that ties into that a lot, our small perspective.
I agree.
And going back to the Matrix, it kind of points to, there's signs that they could see that that's not all there is.
Yeah.
It talks about the deja vu.
Deja
with
vu.
The cat. It basically like it shows that Neo, when he's in that little apartment, he's somebody that's questioning the reality.
Yeah. Well, and The Matrix really just opened your eyes to the fact that what if we were all just plugged in?
Mm-hmm.
What if we were plugged in and we were just being programmed to, our brain was being programmed to fire off the synapses to see whatever the Matrix wanted us to see.
Yes.
There's really, I think that's unlimited, the possibilities there. Like, eventually science is going to know how to plug into our brains and send the signals that are going to make us think one thing or another, whether it's there real or not.
If we are in the Matrix, that would be basically a Matrix Inception.
Matrix
Inception.
Inception.
Matrix.
Right, I agree.
Yes, that would be when what if it is we figure out how to do the Matrix, we go into it, we're in the Matrix already. What is that? I mean, what level are we on there?
Right. You're going deep down into levels.
Yeah.
And actually this gets into a lot of the simulation theory or simulation, what is it called? Which I know we're going to talk about later, but simulated reality and things like that, where how many layers down are we? How many levels in this simulation are we? If we're in a simulation, but we're a simulation of another simulation, and that simulation is a simulation of another simulation, it's, it gets pretty deep.
It is. What if, like, the Matrix is a point of our development? Say, instead of the Star Trek model, to where our development is we expand out into the universe, what if instead we reach a point and we go, we can't really expand out in the universe, there's not places within reach that are habitable, we go inward and we create matrices.
Expand inward.
Yes.
Right. It's an interesting concept, actually, that I heard recently from someone else who was discussing, is it every species, motive or goal to expand outward? Because once you can't expand outward, you have to expand inward, like you're saying.
Yeah. And I mean, with how much we're looking at the sky, just another habitable planet seems really far away, to where we'd have to come up with faster than light speed or some other mode of travel.
Wormholes. Yeah.
Beaming, whatever it is, to get to that. What if we don't even have the resources on Earth to create enough fuel to have that technology?
Right, yeah.
We come to that realization. I mean, I've heard there's the possibility of, say, harnessing our star. And scientists have even come up with, say, levels of civilizations theorizing on whether or not there's UFOs, or other civilizations, not necessarily UFOs. But say, like, they call us a level 1 type race, to where we're kind of using the power of our planet.
Right.
Say, like, a level 2 would be advanced enough to they're using the power of their star.
Interesting.
So that's a whole nother level of power.
Right, yeah. And also on that same topic, I mean, if we're a level 1 species, why is a level 2 or level 3 species even going to have anything to do with us? We are like an ant next to a 10-lane freeway.
Yeah.
That they don't care what's going on with us or even know we exist, the ants, and we on the freeway could give a damn about that anthill.
Or these types of people could be right in front of us and we don't know how to look at them. We just talked about
because we don't see
our limited senses.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they could be flying right by our planet every day.
And
walking beside us.
This could come down to that point of what are ghosts? What are what are UFOs?
What are the stories of angels, demons, ghosts, all that stuff?
Yeah, all those things definitely come into play. But the Matrix definitely brings up an interesting, perspective of the simulation theory, and what our reality really means. And can we see past that? So.
Yeah, and I did come across a couple critiques of The Matrix. And one big one was Keanu Reeves' acting. I wasn't that taken by it this time that I saw it.
Taken meaning you didn't think it was very good?
Yes, I think I've seen it enough times now that I kind of see the faults in his acting.
I actually was focusing on that myself. And, the there are terrible things said about Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Like, nobody likes his acting. He's always getting bashed for his acting. Although, I think that there are certain levels of acting, certain levels of actors out there. Like, he's not the kind of actor that is so bad that he's on a CW teenage TV show.
I mean, it's not Hulk Hogan.
Right.
Or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously got enough acting chops to be in blockbuster movies, although he hasn't been in anything recently. He's got something going on. But, as you were just saying, I was watching The Matrix, and while I was watching it, I'm seeing these little things where it's like, well, it doesn't look like he's getting too deep here. Mm-hmm. His reaction to this, his reaction to that, well, they are reactions, and they're believable reactions. Yeah. He's not digging down deep into this character and creating,
Another thing was with that kind of acting, it doesn't have that much depth. Him and Trinity, their relationship, it's kind of, they're so stone-faced through the movie, and everybody that's kind of out of the Matrix, wearing the leather and everything, does not show that much emotion. But later on, we're supposed to more and more believe that Neo and Trinity are in love.
Right.
And I think it's almost like they don't build, all of a sudden it's like, we're in love, and where'd that come from?
Right, yeah. As you get into the second and third movies, like, that's really what it comes down to, because Neo is sacrificing himself in ways for Trinity, and Trinity the other way around, sacrificing herself for him. But yeah, I really was starting to see why people point out what they point out when it comes to Keanu Reeves acting.
Yes.
But again, he does get the story and the story in this, and the twists and the mystery, I think, are enough to kind of keep you going. Yeah. To where you can kind of, you can accept what Keanu Reeves brought to the table, as a companion to that story.
You can kind of see why Hugo Weaving, is that his name, the Agent Smith, why he kind of became popular after that movie.
Yeah.
He's been in he was in V for Vendetta and the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah.
Because I thought, with that wooden acting, his performance kind of stood out.
Absolutely, he did a great job, and he gave the agents that character, and it wasn't stone-faced, and it wasn't. Well, it was actually,
it was robotic.
It was robotic, exactly. Yeah, it was computerized, basically, because that's what it was. He was a computer program.
Yeah, and I liked Morpheus too. I don't know if it's necessary to say like a deep character, but he's that Obi-Wan in the movie.
He is the Obi-Wan.
And
right.
That's a lot of times in most movies, that Obi-Wan character, the old mentor, is one of my favorites.
Yeah. He gets held in high regard, Morpheus, the character Morpheus, in that movie. Everybody points to him. Neo's looking for Morpheus. Trinity, is like, Morpheus says he's the one, You're basically holding him in very high regards. The Smiths are looking for Morpheus. That's who they're after. They don't care about Neo. Yeah. In fact, they captured Neo in the first 30 minutes of the movie, and they let him go because they want to find Morpheus.
Yes.
Not realizing that Neo is really the one. He's held in fairly high regard, although he's kind of a jerk, right? Like, why doesn't he tell Neo what taking the pill is going to do? Yes. Like, yeah, you do have to experience it if you really want to experience it, but hey, by the way, if you take this pill, you're basically going to be living in hell for fucking the rest of your life now.
And also, and I guess I'm expanding outside the first movie here, where he stands with the rest of humanity. He would be one of those religious nuts.
He would be.
He's willing to sacrifice everyone in Zion on his belief.
Yeah.
And put everyone at risk based on his belief.
Yeah. And that's kind of part of the reasons why I don't like 2 and 3. 3 especially, because 3 spends most of its time in Zion. They don't go into the Matrix very often. So it's almost like you go back in time. It's almost like they're a primitive race. They're dancing, and he's having these religious speeches, basically, you've got to believe, blah, blah, blah. And 2 was better. Definitely 2 was better.
And 2, I think, had the best action sequence with the highway chase. That one was a really good mix of practical effects and CGI, I thought.
Yeah. I thought the effects for every movie was good. They did a very good job. But you're right, and I think that actually has the record, or was at least the record, for the longest car chase scene in any movie ever.
Yes, they actually built a section of freeway just for that movie.
Yeah, so they did do a very good job on that. But when it comes down to the trilogy, it's really the original Matrix that.
Yeah, and say like when you get into part 2, I thought it brought some interesting points about, say, vampires, werewolves, things like that being glitches in the Matrix, or leftovers from old versions.
Right.
But the disappointing thing is they just mention that, then they go right into a fight scene. You kind of see a couple of guys who are maybe vampires, but the main guys are those weird white guys that kind of walk through walls. And I thought that's a letdown. I thought
they're almost ghosty.
Yeah, ghosty. And I thought I would have liked, you mentioned werewolves, vampires. I thought it would have been cool to see Neo fighting werewolves and vampires in the next scene.
Although I think it would have taken us out of the genre that we were in. It wasn't a horror movie, so to bring in a werewolf, to bring in a vampire, I think that really would have detracted from where we were supposed to be, which is more of a sci-fi.
Oh, yes.
And so it might have been kind of weird, and maybe they thought about that when they were making the movie. Yeah. So they just threw it in there as a mention because they wanted that to be part of that, a support for what the Matrix is and those glitches like deja vu and ghosts and werewolves and stuff like that. But it does get you thinking about reality too, right? That gets you thinking, because why do so many people see things like UFOs, like ghosts?
Yes. And we've talked about dreams before, and like, why does this weirdness happen when we fall asleep?
Yeah, right. What's our brain doing? Our brain, when we're sleeping, they say that that dreams is kind of a way to wipe the slate clean or whatever, kind of cleanse your brain out for the next day. But it puts together, sometimes incomprehensible stories, but sometimes, they make sense. Sometimes it's telling a story where it makes no sense in your daily life, but, dude, sometimes I want to wake up and write a movie about it.
Oh, yeah.
Last night I had a very interesting dream too. Nice. That could have been made a movie, but it had absolutely nothing to do with my personal life. But
the Matrix, the part 2 does have Neo having a dream where he sees Trinity die.
He does, yeah. He's having kind of a vision type of dream, yeah. I don't think that the Matrix, as the movie goes on, it doesn't really explain enough, or maybe I just didn't get it, of the whole connection with the Oracle and the Architect and the One. Do they exist outside the Matrix?
Yeah, because this thing is like Neo had powers outside of the Matrix.
Right, exactly.
And Agent Smith was starting to take over things outside of the Matrix.
So is that a sign that they were a simulation within a simulation?
It could be.
Is that basically what it was?
Because say, like, for example, you wake up and you're in Zion all of a sudden. Would you then still wonder, is there a God?
Right.
Is this a simulation? Are we in the Matrix?
Yeah, right.
Would you be like, I woke up and that's it?
Well, I can guarantee you that if I were Neo and I suddenly found out that my whole existence for 30 years was programmed from this machine, and then I got out of this goop and I was living in this fucking crazy world underground or whatever, I would be like, wait a minute, maybe there's another level to this. Is this real? Can I go back to sleep and wake up in the Matrix again? That kind of thing.
Yeah. And so and see, I didn't get that level as much when it started getting into the Oracle and the Architect and Neo and their relationship, as far as did they create the Matrix? Did they exist outside the Matrix? Yeah. All of that. That got a little bit muddled, I thought.
Right. Yeah. So overall, what do you think about? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we thought about the Matrix, and then maybe touch on the trilogy a little bit. Like, what's your score? What's your critique?
Like a 1 to 10?
Yeah, give me a 1 to 10 on the Matrix.
As far as in that genre, it's one of my favorites.
Okay.
I would
Like
say
what genre do you throw it in? Sci-fi?
the sci-fi, but the kind of mind-bending sci-fi. Because I really appreciate when sci-fi brings up philosophical questions of, if this technology exists, then what?
Right.
And I think a lot of the old episodes of Star Trek ask those questions. And say Transcendence, even though I say that's not a very good movie, it does ask those questions.
Yeah.
But I think out of those, that's one of my favorites. And I think, too, it just hit me right at the right part of my life, to where it's like I was impressionable. I was about 19 years old. I liked the action. And so I think it's got that nostalgia to me now.
Right. Yeah.
But I would give it, say, overall, considering like what it meant to be, I'd give it like around 8 or 9.
8 or 9.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Even some mark-offs for the acting and the development of like the Neo-Trinity relationship.
Yeah. And then the following 2 movies. The trilogy as a whole, maybe even.
Yeah, and see, and I think how the trilogy turned out kind of takes away from the Matrix a little bit.
It does a little bit. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if I would give it that high of a score myself, especially if I'm looking at it from a movie perspective, as a moviegoer, not just somebody who likes sci-fi or somebody that wants some action adventure, but from a whole movie perspective. It probably could have been done better, or maybe it just didn't have what it takes to make a great movie. Yeah. But for having some sci-fi and putting some twists and turns in it that you're probably not expecting, you've never really seen something like that before, it did a good job of that. It definitely keeps you entertained. It was worth it for me to go out and buy the trilogy just so I could watch it anytime I wanted, when I wanted something fun to watch. I definitely never really complained about the acting before, but now I see that, Neo's character could have probably been done a little bit deeper. Keanu Reeves only has so much in him. Although the rest of them did a pretty good job,
Yeah, and I think it's one of those where some of the supporting actors shined above the main.
Exactly, yeah. And then the next 2 to follow, obviously, what was part 2 called? Reloaded?
Reloaded.
Yeah, so Matrix Reloaded, I thought was still pretty good. It gave you a little bit deeper understanding of what was going on, either outside the Matrix or beyond the Matrix. Like, with the whole, what was the French guy?
Oh God. Yeah, I just called him the French guy.
The French dude. So the French dude and what he can do. He's not in the Matrix. He's not working for the agents. He's like a third party out there doing weird stuff with the Matrix and controlling it. So that was an interesting, little play. It's like they're all living inside of a computer here, and he's a virus on the outside of the computer or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like he's kind of trafficking things that should or should not be in the Matrix.
Yeah. But again, when you get to part 3, I thought too much time in Zion, too much native dancing and stuff like that. Weird things that I really didn't care about, didn't need to see. The whole ending to me too, like with the Sentinels breaking in to Zion, it was too much for me to see that battle. Like sometimes you can battle too much, kind of like when you watch the Transformers movie. Michael Bay totally fucking did way too much CGI, mechanical. You don't know who's fighting who because they all just look like a bunch of metal wrapped together.
Yeah, and say, for example, going on to the others, part 2, I thought the highway scene was awesome. But I thought the battle between all the Smiths, and Neo in that playground was awful.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some parts were animated.
Well, yeah, even the CGI was bad.
Yes.
But the concept was even a little bit weird, too.
I did not appreciate that. Because, say, like, they're making these huge rivals of Neo and Smith, and he turns it into there's hundreds of Smiths.
Yeah.
And I thought they should have it would have been better if they just had a centralized character.
Yeah, and maybe what they could have done was they could have split Smith off a little bit. Like, he went rogue against the Matrix. And which he kind of did, but he turned into a virus where he spread. I think it would have been better if it was him against Neo who was also against the Matrix,
Uh-huh.
and who's also battling everybody.
And I think they kind of tried to do that because I think the version of Smith that took over the Oracle was the one he fights as the grand finale.
Right.
But it's still kind of like, why isn't he fighting all the Smiths?
Yeah, exactly.
They're all standing there watching.
Yeah. So overall, The Matrix, good movie. The final two.
Yeah, but it was definitely starting at the top of the mountain and going downhill from there.
Exactly, yeah. But what it did is it got us thinking about simulation theory, simulation reality, things that we're going to talk about in future podcasts.
Yes.
All right. Call it a day.
Call it a day.
Follow us. Follow us on Twitter.
Subscribe to our channel on YouTube.
Subscribe on YouTube.
DGTassPodcast.
Yeah.